we were trying to lead this committee about what are we going to do to make systemic change in the area of workplace suicide prevention. But we wanted to center it around people's lived experience. But what it resulted in was a set of workplace guidelines. They're centered on 8 guiding principles. I'm going to hit them really at a high level so you know, like, these are the core values that guide the decision making on the implementation. So one is around strategic integration. It's long-term, it's baked in. The other piece is that it's really an investment. I heard that comment this morning, that this is not an awareness piece or a program or an initiative. It's an investment in culture change. We're also talking about harm reduction. And by that I mean there are things we're doing in our workplaces that are causing harm, psychological harm to people, that is driving the distress and despair that can lead to suicide. We're talking about culture cultivation, really shifting the air that we breathe around this so it doesn't seem unusual anymore. It's just part of the fabric of the thing that we do. We're talking about dignity protection. Shout out to my colleague Eduardo Vega, who says that really at the heart of this is people's dignity. And how do we protect that dignity when they're going through their hardest time, just like we would want ours protected when we are going through ours? Another value is this is about well-being promotion. It's not good enough just to keep people back from the brink of dying by suicide. We need to help. The workplace has a role in helping people live into their best lives. It's also about an empowered connection, not a hot potato moment where we're taking quote-unquote troubled people and popping them off to counselors, but that we're really engaged in the process, the warm handoff. We know our resources, not just the number, not just the website, but we know them. We know how they work, and we can do that warm handoff when people need help. And that, again, is really about action. So in terms of the 9 practices, upstream, midstream, and downstream practices, the H.O.P.E certification takes a deep dive in each of these. So in upstream, we're cultivating leadership. We're looking at those workplace psychosocial hazards, the things that are happening at work that are driving distress and despair, and a communication strategy that really changes the conversation. In the midstream, we are orienting this conversation around self-care. Nobody really likes to be told what to do, but if we can empower people to own this part of their health, own this part of their well-being, and be able to check in with themselves on how good am I doing today, do I need support, then we're going to be far more successful. We're also looking at a stratified training program that involves different levels of intensity around different training that is baked into your training initiatives. Peer support, as I mentioned earlier, is the future. How do we build out formal peer support programs? And then in the downstream, how do we know our mental health and crisis resources? How do we make sure that they're a good fit? How do we also mitigate the risk to an organization around places potentially that have association with lethal means safety, as well as risk that your employment lawyers might have around concerns of liability. Let's talk about that. Let's get that fear out of the way. And then finally, crisis response. What is our plan when we have a crisis around a mental health emergency? So to kick this off, I want to introduce Jenna. Jenna is one of the leaders in New York State for mental health and suicide prevention. She couldn't be with us today because of travel restrictions from the state, but she wanted to send her message on why the state of New York wanted to be the first state to implement the certification program.
Hi, my name is Jenna Heitz, and I'm the Director of Implementation here at the Office of Mental Health's Suicide Prevention Center in New York State. And I'm here to talk to you today about a very interesting pilot that we helped to create here over the last year. I just wanted to talk to you first about how New York became interested in this concept and decided to pursue this new idea. Excuse me. So our main goals here at the Suicide Prevention Center are to promote and coordinate and strategically advance suicide prevention in New York State. We have been highly successful in doing this in schools and other large systems like healthcare and behavioral health care systems, looking at very comprehensive and strategic frameworks and models. What we started thinking about was, who are we missing with this? We looked at the data, we looked at the research, and we looked at there are kind of middle-aged men a large part of that group that we're missing. We're looking at schools, you look at healthcare, and think about, well, who isn't accessing healthcare, behavioral healthcare, and there's this large group of adults that we are not able to capture to help that might be in distress. And so where do these folks spend the majority of their time? And it's at work and in the workforce. And so it became clear that we wanted to try to help these folks that might be at risk of suicide. And it got us thinking, okay, what jobs and what industry and what groups might be in need of the most support? And when we started looking at all of this, all roads led to construction, the construction industry. And there was data that was collected over the last several years, and that showed us that the construction industry has the highest rates of suicide. You look at one person per 100,000 people in the population. It's a way to level the population, the playing field, and look at large groups like this across New York State or across the United States. And when we looked at that, and looked at this long list of different industries, there was agriculture and mining was first in the list of different industries that were affected by suicide, and then we looked at the second one, and it was construction. Then we looked at the numbers. Okay, what does that look like? Well, there was 15 deaths by suicide in the mining and agriculture industry. Okay, how about construction? Because they were second. 130 deaths. Okay, second in rates, second in numbers. I think we really owe these folks some work on our part. Let's start looking at how we can help them. And so when we started looking, how can we stop suicides for construction industry? So I went to the National Action Alliance. They have resources and state-of-the-art programming. What's happening in workforce suicide prevention there? Just like we did when we started looking at what frameworks have already been developed for schools, for healthcare, behavioral healthcare, a number of other things that we look at and work on here at the center that can make really impactful and meaningful change for these groups of folks. And what we found was for the construction industry, there's been new work done with different looking at different places for this comprehensive model for implementation, but there had never been anything done at the state level. And so I called the writer and somebody had been working in this field for a while, Dr. Sally Spencer-Thomas, who is here with you today on this panel, leading the panel, and looked at her work that she had done with large groups of construction folks. And she had their input, and so I knew this was going to be something that was very genuine and very well thought out. And, excuse me, she has an excellent reputation in the field of suicide prevention. We got to talking, and there was a lot of very good synergy, and I knew that this was something that we were going to be able to do that could affect great change for people that were in distress in that industry. And so I knew that we wanted to look at this H.O.P.E certification that she was talking about. And the other thing was my own personal experience with my professional experience. And I am a wife of somebody in the construction industry who I have lived with and known for over 20 years. He's a plumber and a pipe fitter, my husband. And whenever there is a death by suicide, in the union, how much it really affects and hurts all the people that are involved there and at the job site, and how hard it is for everybody to accept and work with and overcome. And so I knew, looking at overall Sally's materials and this comprehensive approach that she was talking about for this the construction industry and this pilot program that she had developed, that I knew intuitively that this was going to work and that this was going to help so many folks. And then we started the work, and the Surgeon General came out with a new report, also state of the art, and was looking at workplace suicide prevention and mental health and wellness. And it was so validating to see that here we were months into this program, and this report comes out about the very thing that we've been doing. And I was talking about how work can be a source of toxic stress for so many, but how it could also be an engine for change and for health and for hope. And that was certainly exactly what we were trying to do. And I was so excited as I got to know the different groups and teams that have been doing this work with Sally in New York State. And we're so proud to be part of this work, and so excited at looking at the evaluation, but not only the hard data, you can just see the change that's happened within these agencies and from all the hard work these teams have done. So I will let you talk with them, and I hope that you all have a wonderful summit. Thank you.
Awesome. So shout out to New York for being the first state. We hope to have many more. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about a little overview on what we actually did.
All right. So the actual program, taking it beyond sort of those concepts and those steps, it's a big lift. You look at it and you can see that. And so Sally and her team developed an actual program to help companies with this lift, to actually walk beside you for the entire process. It started with our summit, which is where I met these very fine people. We had several agencies, companies that had come together, and it was one of the things that was really pretty impressive, similar to what we see here, was the number of companies working side by side with the unions and talking about, here's one thing that we all agree on. We have to make improvements in this area. So we spent an entire day together, talked a lot about mental health and suicide prevention, and even for the groups who did not choose to be part of the pilot, I think it's fair to say they all walked away from that day having gained a lot of insight and some motivation. We had 3 organizations. We have a representative from each one of them here. Also very different organizations, which you'll hear about when they introduce themselves, who chose to be part of this pilot. We then did 4 6-hour modules. This went over a 9-month period, so it is digestible. Yes, they're big things to work on, but they are broken into smaller chunks for you, and throughout that process, we do the modules, but there's also coaching and assistance available to your teams as you need them. And we were very fortunate to have Annette, who is going to talk to you, I know, talk about some of the evaluations and then the process of actually earning the certification. I know I'm going to make a mistake if I try to tell you, but I can say that each one of our teams did reach different levels of the certificate program. And so, as Sally mentioned earlier today, I think you all were here, the hope someday is that this is going to be another seal that you have to show that your company has done this work. No program would be concluded appropriately without a graduation party. And so these are pictures of our teams came together for a fabulous dinner in New York City and our graduation party. And I'll turn it back to Sally.
Okay. All right, so we want you now to hear from the people who actually participated in the certification program. And again, it was a pilot. We're all learning here, and there was lots of lessons to be learned, but it's also something special to be the first to take this initiative. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie to talk about what CNY did and what they learned.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Katie Artnowski, and I am the Vice President of People and Culture at CNY. That's a fancy title for saying I head up HR. CNY is a construction management firm in New York, and before I really get into anything, I just want to say thank you to everyone here for putting this on, and it's an invigorating experience, and I'm so excited to be a part of this movement. I was first introduced to the H.O.P.E program through Dr. Sally. I saw her at a conference, and she let me know that New York State was doing something. I went back to my organization and asked to have a couple of team members join me, and it was a snap to get 6 people who were interested, and it was from all levels. So I had a project executive, senior superintendent, somebody from marketing to help with communications. It was actually awe-inspiring how much people really wanted to be a part of this program. And that group came together and we called it CNY H.O.P.E. And we wanted to go through the certification process because we wanted to learn and we wanted to be guided on how to be most impactful, because we had a lot of ideas, but we didn't know how to actually execute. And that was our goal for this. So the first thing that we did was a needs assessment. And we did this, a couple of things for this. We did an anonymous survey. We used a online service called Qualtrics. It's like SurveyMonkey, but we use SurveyMonkey for all of our HR stuff, and we wanted it to be separated out. So we picked a different platform. And then we also held focus groups. 50% of our employees responded to the anonymous survey, and 83% of the invited attendees actually participated in the focus groups. And we broke that up by management and staff. And there's a couple things we learned. So what you see here on the slide is our question on what was the most, what impacted mental health the most for our people. And we learned that it was the long hours and trying to balance work and life. We learned that we needed to do a lot of training and a lot of communications. First off, we needed to have people have a shared language around what mental health really is, and then provide context for mental health issues and what suicide prevention was all about. I learned that HR needed to do a lot of communications around our benefits and the resources that we actually had, that we were not reaching our people, so we did what we called advertising campaigns just to ensure that people were aware of the services that we already did have. And we also learned that in the post-pandemic and hybrid work environment, that what our team really wanted was social interactions. And they wanted opportunities to see coworkers and just get together with them and connect. So we spent a lot of time putting together efforts around that. An interesting note that I don't have here is we had launched our survey right around the time that 988 was actually launched. And when the survey response came in, 48% of the respondents had heard about 988. So we actually had a good platform to kind of launch all of our communications around suicide prevention and awareness. The second thing that we did was a screening event. And so we had a whole day event. It was around benefits, employee resource groups, and promoting mental health. The theme was to check in with yourself, and we communicated this whole mental health screening through posters in the office and on job sites. We did it through emails. We had postcards scattered everywhere so people could take something privately, and we did it all with a QR code. That QR code took them to a screening that was done through our EAP. And we picked this screening in particular for 2 reasons. One, it was because we wanted people to be able to screen, but also to bring awareness to what our EAP was. And we saw a huge impact there. The website usage for our EAP jumped by 300% in the week that we did that. And usage of our EAP services actually increased by 150%. Not only that, but every member of our H.O.P.E team was actually contacted by employees to talk more about what we were doing, ask questions about resources, share stories about what people were going through. So we definitely were getting the message out there. Let's see, then lessons learned. So we learned that people are eager in our industry for our industry to embrace psychological safety, and it is as important as physical safety. We learned that our efforts are actually making an impact, and our leadership has luckily been supportive by the beginning, but they really embraced these efforts as the H.O.P.E team kind of moved through the certification process. And we've, again, had all of these wonderful conversations with employees and people on the job sites just about what is so important around suicide prevention and mental health and why it's something that people should be aware of. Let's see. We Also learned, and this is interesting from an HR perspective, is that the suicide awareness and the methodologies that we learned through the certification program isn't just really about mental health. There was an impact on all other different people strategies. Because when you look at things through a mental health lens, you are able to positively influence things like recruiting, retention, or diversity and inclusion, which is all these buzzwords that your HR people may say. And that's something that I think a message that you can take back to your leadership and to HR to say, hey, this is going to do so much more. Not only are we going to be able to save lives, but we're also going to enhance the experiences of our people here. A couple of just notes if you are interested to go through this process. You should definitely make sure that you're picking the right team. It needs to be people who are not only enthusiastic, but have the skills to help you get through the certification process. So it'd be really helpful to ensure that you do have people who have communication skills, you have people who are trusted and are able to connect with individuals in the organization. It's nice to have leadership, safety, everybody involved in this process so that you can really make that impact. And then lastly, we learned that anonymity and confidentiality is extremely important, and you cannot overstress that message. It was a misstep that we made with our screening campaign. We didn't really push that by doing it through the EAP, all of your results would be confidential. And I think we would have had a better impact and an even wider breadth of people who would have participated if we had really driven that message home. And that's my spiel.
Awesome. And we'll have time for questions at the end. Thank you, Katie. That was an amazing summary. One of the things I wanted to stress that I didn't earlier, two things. One is that this needs and strengths assessment is key to the success of your program. And you might sit there like, oh yeah, we already know what the stressors are. We already know what the problems are. We already know what our people think. And I would say, do you really? Do you really? Because we've always found interesting findings every time we've done this needs and strengths assessment. I remember we were working in this data center and we did this needs and strengths assessment, and one of the stressors came up. There was a whole wing of people that were working in a place without windows. And they're like, we would like some windows with some natural light. Boom, done, natural light. So again, it's not always about sending people to counselors. Sometimes it's things like building windows in a certain place of the building. The other thing I want to say that was key in this, as you'll start to hear, is that we started to form what we call a community of practice, a group of teams that were working on this together, going through struggles together. They leaned on each other, they learned from each other, and it was a big part of the success. So now I'll turn it over to Chris to talk about what they did. Oh, TJ. Right, TJ.
Good afternoon. I'm TJ Smith. I'm with the New York State Laborers Health and Safety Fund. I'm a member of LIUNA Laborers Local 147 out of the Bronx, New York. And I just want to thank Sally and her team. We're not the easiest people to deal with, and as most of you are aware, especially when it comes to technology and emails and RSVPing and getting on Zooms for hours upon end. And I also got to thank the members of the team. John Nimmo is my counterpart from Buffalo. He's sitting up here in front making faces at me, so that will help this get along. And he's also got the hook for when I continue to speak when I shouldn't. And anybody that's been in the room with me before knows that I can go on and on and on. I also need to thank Betty Pascuzzi. She's from CWA, Local 1106, Long Island, Verizon, New York. The communication workers, she was a vital, intricate part of our team that we would not have been able to get through the certification process without her. And I got to piggyback what Katie just said about finding the right members of the team. You definitely need some help in doing this thing, and I really got to thank Sally's people too for helping us get through the process, because it was a process. I've also been the Members Assistance Program Director for the New York City Sandhogs, which is how I started to do this work. And then when I first met Sally, we participated with the steam fitters out of New York City who had her coming in to do the Working Mind Summit. So I didn't realize how much suicide has been a part of my life until I walked in that room And when she put up on the slide about excavation and men in construction, I started to put the pieces together. So kudos to you on bringing that to New York and getting me able to bring it back to the members and the men and women in the field and trying to get them to understand the importance of this topic.
Leadership video.
Yeah. So needless to say, this is my executive director, and we had to pay him heavily to make this video. And believe me, now that he knows that it is being aired in public, we will owe him more. So without further ado, I give you Frank Marchese.
Good morning. My name is Frank Marchese Jr., and I serve as the Executive Director of the New York State Labor's Health and Safety Trust Fund. It is my pleasure to join you this morning to take a few moments to discuss the importance of mental health in the construction industry. As we all know, the construction industry is a tough place. There are often long days, and there's a lot of uncertainty about future work and current work. The financial insecurity that goes along with that creates a lot of pressure both on and off the job. The construction site is a competitive place where work is not always guaranteed, and the longevity of that work is also not guaranteed. This creates a great deal of pressure for our members. I'd like to take a moment to talk about suicide prevention and awareness and where we are as a union. We all know, realistically, a member who is struggling with mental health or struggling with a substance abuse problem will not approach a supervisor or a union official about their addiction problem or mental health issue. Therefore, it is important for us to provide resources to our members and to break that stigma about mental health and about suicide awareness and substance abuse. I myself have dealt with issues of substance abuse on the project. A dear friend of mine who was also a member of our labor union struggled mightily for many years with both an alcohol and drug addiction. After completing almost a year of rehab, came back to the project and very soon thereafter fell back into that cycle of addiction and unfortunately passed away less than 1 month after coming back from a 1-year stint in rehab. It is these kind of stories that we hear every day, and now we are hearing of our members not only losing members, but we are hearing of members losing their children through this insidious disease called addiction in this country. So it is our job as a health and safety fund to provide the resources to our members to let them know that there is a safe place to talk about these struggles through mental health and through the struggles of substance abuse. We are currently embarking in partnership with our Labor's Health and Safety Fund on a campaign to raise awareness of suicide awareness and suicide prevention through the 988 national number. In the spring, we will embark on a poster campaign with posters indicating there is help available through 988 on job sites, training centers throughout the state of New York. We are also in the process of using toolbox talks. Starting last fall, we began a toolbox program in which we go out for a lunch time visit on large-scale projects, provide lunch for the members, and have about a 15-minute or so chat with the members about suicide awareness and prevention. By raising the awareness of suicide and allowing our members to understand that there is a place for them to talk about what is going on in their lives off the job site, we feel that we can have a great impact on the mental health of our membership. It is my hope that through the New York State Office of Mental Health and with this HOPE certification, that we continue that journey and double our efforts in terms of getting this information to our members and providing help that our members so desperately need. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to future work with the New York State Office of Mental Health.
So, Frank, greatest boss in the world, by the way. I don't know if anybody knows. John will tell you, but we could let you know he's a great man, and he allows us to do this work. And also Jamie Becker, I don't know if she's in here, but she is the director out of DC, and she is who initiated us on the suicide prevention journey. And when I first talked to her about Sally, she said, continue to do that. And then we did this with Frank, and all of this was in the works. And I actually contacted Sally again to try to bring her out to talk to our staff and do maybe a train the trainer for some of our training centers. And needless to say, I met Chris as well with the labor assistance professionals. And then he said, I'm going up to the summit in Albany. Why don't you, and I couldn't get up there out of conflict. And then they gave me a gentle nudge and as anybody who's worked with Sally, you see, you're not going to say no. She's very persuasive and very good at what she does. and she is a leader in this field. And I got to tell you, if you haven't been through her training, please sit through it. But so it just coincided with this, and then once I knew one of our signatory contractors was involved, we talked to our trustees, and they were like, please, do this, especially with the Office of Mental Health. So Frank jumped right on board, allowed us to do this. We jumped in. This was our first event, and it coincided with doing this pilot program, which was spectacular. And we got 2 shafts down in Queens, which was, they couldn't believe it. I had a couple different locals, Local 731, Local 147, the operators 14 and 15, the Teamsters, Ironworkers Local 46, the Lathers. We were all there. They allowed me to come there and do the toolbox talk. It was very short. CPWR, shout out to them too, thank you. We just did the toolbox talk. They talked it. The safety people were shocked. They were like, why did they actually listen to you? I'm like, because I'm one of them. And so needless to say, they invited us back. So there are some things that are working here. And with the new branded 988 cards, it's definitely something that we should continue to do. And as you heard, we will be.
Awesome. All right.
This is the rest of the agenda, 988, high impact suicide awareness campaign. We're doing it with the laborers, the National Fund, the posters, the job site, the toolbox talks. He also has this other thing, branding, these coffee cups thing. We'll share that with everybody if you'd like to know that. And ultimately, the value of going through this with these guys and gals, it allowed us the opportunity, and I didn't even tell Sally yet, but about 3 weeks ago, I got to go down to a conference with our contractors, the Hudson Valley Industry Partnership, Construction Industry Partnership, with about 150 contractors, owners, trustees, union officials, and give that talk. And I don't think I would have been able to do it if we didn't have this background, we didn't go through this process, and the help with these people to get that done. So if you have the opportunity to, I suggest, highly recommend, get in it, get the training. And Katie just said it before, these are our people. People get people well, and we got to give them the opportunity, have the conversation. If you can't handle it, have them call 988. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, TJ. Woo! A couple things I want to highlight about TJ's story was, one, that leadership video that you saw, that's one of the deliverables. So how do people earn certification? They do the work with their teams, and like Katie says, a diverse, small, but highly committed team is a winner. And they bring back these deliverables. And then we have a third-party verification through Evergreen certification that makes sure they pass this knowledge quiz, they hand over deliverables, make sure they're at best practice, and as they complete these deliverables, they start to earn different levels of certification. So the benefit of the leadership video is that you get to coach your leader to say, here's what people need to hear. They need to hear why it's important to our mission and the job we do every day. We need to hear why it's important to you, leader. What is your personal passion around this? And then what can we expect moving forward? So I think Frank did a fabulous job, but we're getting more and more leaders with titles and without titles to make that kind of influence. And then, again, the certification piece is a significant process of working together with your team, delivering deliverables, rinse and repeat. So now for Chris.
How are you? Chris Lalevy, Operating Engineers, Local 825. Local 825 covers all of New Jersey and 5 lower counties in New York, what's known as the Hudson Valley. I started basically a grassroots members assistance program about 2017 when I was working in our referral hall, and then met a man named Kyle Zimmer, who's in the back there, who was really doing a big push for members assistance with the Operating Engineers International across the nation. Why did I do this? I had friends that passed away from overdose. I had friends that passed away from suicide. I'm a generational construction worker. I was in the field for 23 years. I saw the real deal out there. And that's really all I can say about it. So when I heard New York State was doing something, and a gentle nudge, I guess, like TJ said from Sally, gentle, I was all in. I was happy that we actually went into New York, so this was something I can participate in. So with our members assistance program, there was with the H.O.P.E certification, there was a bunch of deliverables. So one of them was getting the word out. What we were doing with the Members Assistance Program is we had a decal campaign. We set up an email, we set up a phone number where people can call to get assistance. We would help them, we would direct them properly, or we would just listen, whatever they might have needed. So what we did was got these decals on all the various equipment, different sizes for hard hats as well. And if you know an operating engineer, that equipment will go from one job to the other job to the other job. So one piece of equipment may see 6 operators, it may see 12 operators in 1 year. So it's a good way for us to get the word out, plus it's inside of a cab. Somebody could take a picture of it, and it's very concealed. So doing the H.O.P.E gave us the drive to elevate the game. Because of the deliverables that were set in place and what we had to do, it definitely elevated from where we were to where we are now. I had somebody come and volunteer, a woman that works in our funds, Therese Edwards, who couldn't be here. Without her, I'd have been kind of screwed because I'm a construction guy and I don't know much about the whole computer thing and what Sally was asking me to do. And I'd rather stand up here and beat my head with this microphone than do some of the stuff that Therese really came in and made happen. So elevating our game got me out there talking to companies, onboarding our companies, educating our members. I've been down to plenty of toolbox talks, and now instead of talking to the companies are reaching out to us to bring this up. The good part about that is talking to the companies, we're talking to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're an operator, it doesn't matter if you're a laborer, you can be from anywhere. I met some carpenters here from North California that are going to be doing a program. You know, and this is something that's really happening, and it's good to see because there's so many that need help. It may not be you, it may be your spouse, it may be your kids, but looking out for each other brings just a safer work environment when you know somebody's dealing with something and maybe you can identify with them a little bit. So our program got us talking, and presentations, like I said, all of a sudden we started getting invited, discussions with members, more communication at membership meetings. So we have 4 districts in Local 825. We have South Jersey, Central Jersey, North Jersey, and New York. There is a map here at every meeting, just with resources, with whatever somebody may need, and directing it where it has to go. On our map team, we have 17 peers right now. We have people with lived experiences like myself. We have people in recovery, both narcotic and alcohol. We started up about a year ago and successfully have maintained an online AA meeting that's on Zoom and open to anybody on Sundays. And it's all construction people, so everybody feels at home. It's within our community. With the companies, the most important thing is working to blend it into safety. If we're in our right minds, then we're going to be pretty safe. A couple things that I say is a recovering alcoholic will never show up hungover. A recovering addict will never show up strung out. And somebody working on their mental health will always be regimented and usually be on time every day, and that's a pretty good worker and a safe worker. Then I got to a good one, which was a flow chart. And God, my flow chart was show up at 6:30, start the crane, tell some jokes, do my day. A flow chart. Again, I got to thank Therese. But what did a flow chart do for me? It made me take a deeper dive. So for all you office people here that know flow charts and org charts and all this stuff, I mean, good on you, man. Yeah, I run equipment, I put stuff in the air and I dig holes, but all that stuff, wow. And I guess I got to thank Sally for introducing me to a flow chart. And now I love using that term around the office because I'm just a construction guy, and I'll say, is there a flow chart for this? But if you want to just take a quick look, basically we took it and divvied it up into 4 things to where you have, critical but not in crisis with 988, then somebody that's in serious crisis with 911. I forget what the next one is, and I can't see. Yeah, I did. I had it on my phone. No, I know. But basically what it does is it puts our program together. It has, at the end of each part of what might be going on, has to call the MAP coordinator. In that respect, what I will do is work with our companies. I'll work with that person, their family, get them the help that they need, get the company a replacement if that's what's needed, and take care of pretty much all the legwork that people may have to go through. And we're not in our right mind when we have to go somewhere. Last week we got 2 of our members in recovery and a member's child in recovery. So this is a weekly thing. It's a daily thing. It's going on every day. So, but I thank you for that flow chart. And the last thing really is the things that we learned with doing the H.O.P.E certification really helped us coordinate a little bit better. Although we were a small team, I have a bi-monthly meeting with the peers. I was able to bring everything back, share what I learned, put things together like our flow chart, get the decal campaign going harder, 988 things, all the things that should be out on the job for the workers. More education, developed some postvention, talked about that, discussed some real issues, and I'd love to give an impact story, but truth is every day we make an impact in some way or another to somebody. So, but there's a call, there's a text, there's a head nod, there's a wave at a union meeting, just a smile, and you know what that means. It means thank you. And it's not easy to say that as a guy in the construction industry. It's not easy to say that that's what I did. And with the H.O.P.E certification, more people have stood up and said, you know what, that program helped me. That program helped my daughter. That program helped my wife. And they're around friends and they're not going to be stigmatized. They're not going to be looked down on. We're more engaged. And really that's what the H.O.P.E certification did. It's what it brought. And it's making the union and the contractors work together more collaboratively for workers' wellness. Thanks.
Awesome. And I want to give a huge shout to Chris and his team. 825 is the first organization in the country to get the platinum certification, and CNY is right coming up behind. And the laborers, they got their bronze, but they're working on their gold, and it's going to happen. So this is a long-term process. This isn't going to something you're going to wrap up with a bow necessarily in 9 months, and we're going to be there for them and help them through the rest of the process, and there'll be a recertification process in a couple of years. Now I want to bring up Annette. Do you want to stay there, or do you want to come up here?
I'll come up.
Okay. Dr. Annette Stivelband is our professional program evaluator, and she's going to talk a little bit about what we learned from the data.
Thank you all so much. I'm really excited to share these initial findings from this external evaluation. It's always a great experience to have this opportunity to evaluate a new and innovative program and see what's working well and also identify areas for improvement. And I'd also like to share some gratitude to everyone who took the time to complete all of the surveys that were part of the external evaluation, so thank you. I lead research evaluation consulting. We do a lot of external evaluations with different types of organizations and also a lot of data analytics. My background is in occupational health psychology, which is the health and well-being of people at work. And so just talking a little bit about what happened over those 9 months behind the scenes is there was a lot of data collection. We had a pre-test, we had a post-test from every single module. There was also, we used the SurveyMonkey platform. We asked questions that were both quantitative and qualitative, so numbers and stories. We looked at a lot of different metrics, and so this is really at the high level. There is a lot more information out there for this evaluation. And so essentially, what we found across the summit to the final module is, as you can see here, the average satisfaction score, which is out of 5 being the most favorable response. Participants were quite satisfied with this time and this really great program. You can see, though, that as for any new program, there were strengths and there was opportunities for improvement. So key strengths included the quality of the presenters, the quality of the content, how interactive the modules were. Sometimes there were some challenges with technology. Sometimes folks had no suggestions for improvements. Other times, the pacing. These are obviously very important topics, but you never know when someone has a story that they want to share, and sometimes that can change the pacing of the modules themselves. And so there was a lot of great feedback that we received. Looking at the trends across the summit to the 4 different modules, I will note that there was not a pre-test at the summit, so that's why one of the lines is missing. But one of the things that we looked at was the knowledge of the content itself. And so if you see an asterisk, that means that the change between the pre-score and the post-score was statistically significant. So that's always something you want to see, especially when you are looking at a pilot program. And so for every single module, we saw a statistically significant increase in knowledge on the specific content that was associated with that module. Now, looking at confidence, we see similar trends across the 4 different modules as well. Again, every single module had a significant increase. So that is exactly what we would want to see in a new and innovative program. Now, when it came to intention to share knowledge and skills, for the most part, you can see here that we see a very similar pattern. However, for Module 2, the scores were identical. That being said, it was very high to begin with in Module 2, and so that is a ceiling effect, most likely. In terms of some of the qualitative data, one of the questions that was asked during the training was what was most impactful about the H.O.P.E certification program, and these are some direct quotes. Being able to get help for myself and others, join this committee, our town hall reviews and accessing our benefits, preparing the peer-to-peer network for our office, and share with my friends and family, awareness. So just some high-level lessons learned. We recommend considering the timing and pacing for future implementation. It would be helpful potentially to provide more time between the modules for teams to get their work done. So the activities outside of the trainings to implement some of those additional activities certified by Evergreen. Perhaps further investigation of implementation challenges to identify additional effective support strategies. It is possible that unions may have a bit more difficulty than larger companies in completing some of the deliverables. Because they may have less leadership support or perhaps smaller teams. It's hard to say, it's a pilot study. Given the impact from this evaluation, it would be important to continue piloting this with future organizations and just continuous evaluation of the impact to support learning and improvement in the future. Great, and there'll be questions later.
Like now.
Oh, all right, well, there you go.
Any questions before we go to what's going to happen next? Okay. Well, we'll be hanging around after for some different questions. So we're going to be pulling together the data, the stories, and putting together a final report in the next couple months, and we will also be doing this pilot again in Colorado. So we encourage you to start. There's actually a self-paced version of this that doesn't get you a certificate, but can get you some badges. And if that's something that, again, you have an outward-facing thing to show other people, vendors, future employees, those kinds of things, that you are really invested in a way that has kind of some third-party verification. So the Colorado pilot is going to start June 27th. We're enrolling different organizations now. The pilot's really at the top of the funnel. Anybody who wants to come can come. We invite as many as possible, and then we have an application process where people can enroll into the pilot. We're only going to take 10 in the second pilot, so we're looking for the companies and unions and professional association chapters that are highly invested, and we will repeat what we did in New York. One of the things we did learn in New York was that we did need more time. That was a New York stipulation. They had to spend down their money by the end of the calendar year, and we're like, okay, you said yes, we're going to make it work. So I'm going to invite Sarah up here for some final thoughts, and then I've got another fire quote. So.
I'm going to apologize in advance if I'm saying something you already know. But in the suicide prevention world, we talk a lot about how suicide is a multifactorial event. It does not happen because of just one thing. It happens because of a series of things that come together in the wrong way at the wrong time. And the reality is suicide prevention is also going to be multifactorial. People often want to throw one thing at it and say, there's the checkbox, we did it, we're good. But to have long and lasting change, we actually need to be doing lots of things. So the benefit, in my view, of going through the H.O.P.E program, which I was very fortunate to be asked by Sally to, I again said yes, to help her in rolling this program out, is that we make that digestible. We're not asking you to try to take on all of these different pieces on your own. The program helps to break it up into digestible pieces where you can do one section at a time. I think one of the other things that we found as observers of this program was that it really built a strong team among the folks who are working together. So if we want to tackle suicide, we have to think about it from a multifactorial perspective and lens. And that's exactly what this program does, is it brings all of these different pieces. And the other thing you've heard people talk about today is that upstream, midstream, and downstream. And so this program helps to incorporate all of those pieces. So the thought that I want to leave you with is when we are agents of change, when it comes to suicide prevention, our job is to walk around the world dropping seeds of hope. They won't all grow, but the more we drop, the more will grow. So I would really personally encourage you to think about this as an opportunity to drop a lot of seeds at once and see what grows. Something beautiful will. All right, Sally?
All right, thank you. And we have the social hour coming up next, which is a really good time for us to have some more conversations about this, and then on a spectacular day tomorrow. So out of the spires of desperation, burn hope and solidarity. And as many have mentioned, this is one of the most inspiring parts of this whole work, is to see people stand in solidarity around this, different forms of lived experience, different parts of the industry, sometimes people that don't talk to each other, stand together and say, this is bigger than just us. So thanks for coming, and hope to see more of you on the next 2 days.